Welcome to selfdiscoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Sara's View of Life right here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. I am your host, Sara Troy. When we screw up, and we're going to do it, and we may do it quite often, it all depends. Sometimes we don't manage our calendar properly. Sometimes things get overwhelmed, or there's interrupters into your cycle of things, and something gets dropped. And that's a screw up. What do we do about it? Do we get all anxious and uptight and, oh my God, what are they going to think? What are they going to do? Or do we just, you screwed up, now what are you going to do about it? Well, that happened to me today. I had to change an appointment, the time thing. I couldn't do the time for a show that was meant to happen tomorrow. And we went back and forth and back and forth. And eventually we changed it for Tuesday. But in the calendar, it didn't move over when I wanted it to. It may have been done on a different emails for a different calendar, and I missed it. So here I am today doing some admin stuff, and go and look at why is the Zoom up here, and it was my client. I've had him on a few times to understand, but that's not the point, is it? Is that how do we stop making faux pas, and how do we kind of stay focused and pay attention to those little changes that if we don't document are going to trip us up? I openly admit my ADD nowadays gets in the way, or my system is thrown out of sync, and that throws me out of sync. And, sometimes, things happen and you don't pay attention to those other things. So how do we stay focused on that? Well, mindfulness, absolutely. Document, document, document. I thought I could have sworn I moved it over to Tuesday, but as I said, it might have been on a different calendar, or it didn't take. Maybe I didn't press save. I don't know. So I'm looking at his show being tomorrow, not today. Nevertheless, things do happen. So how do we stop them from happening? I, for one, in anything, in the show or anything, is own it. Like I'm owning it now. I don't have an assistant. I do wear all the hats, and sometimes, those hats get wobbly and sometimes they fall off, and I let things lax. And sometimes things get overwhelming, or there's other things that pull at you, and all those things that you wanted to achieve in a certain time period are just not feasible, which has happened to me this month. So I need a window of time where I'm not going to be interrupted. Excuse me, that I can completely focus. Been a lot of interruption, baby's been sick again, and I've been under the weather, just coming out of it, and taking on more than we can chew. I'm taking on less than I used to, but I'm still, getting the focus. So what am I doing wrong, and what can I do right? As I said, make sure you document it. I normally check my appointments day or two before, remind people. I always check my appointments the night before to remind myself what is on the next day, what my routine has to be around it. And I missed this one. But, in the back of my mind, I could have sworn I had an AM, not just a PM, an AM. I could have sworn it. And it wasn't on the calendar. My brain didn't click. So can I blame it on being almost 70? No. Although we do have to write things down more because we are more forgetful as we get older. But it is a question of trying to stay on top of things. Systems are so important, especially if you're a person like me, ADD, The true colors, I'm a sky blue. My organizational skill, gold, is in the next building. And it's always been a challenge for me to have that organization. And I've had to learn it through the years and make sure that I am diligent in following it. Otherwise, we'll drop the ball. So I obviously wasn't diligent this time. And it's a reminder, a kick in the butt, stay on top of things. You had a goal, you had things to do, you had appointments, stay on top of it. And, it's sometimes you need that just to kind of, you're falling off the slide here, get back on, balance yourself and get back into equilibrium. Sometimes it's the universal deliverance. Very often, something has happened. Somebody had to cancel a show at the last moment. And that can be awkward for me because I can't get somebody in at the last moment. So I have a hole in my schedule for that week because I can't suddenly turn around to somebody, can you do it today in an hour? Because this person's just cancelled. It doesn't work like that. So that can throw you off as well. And then I have to reschedule them and I have to schedule them where I have a slot. And nowadays I'm always booked a month in advance. So it doesn't always make it easy. And sometimes appointments in my own life come up that I cannot alter. Those are the dates and the times, and I have to make it happen. So, we have to be flexible and be adaptable, but at the same time, understand things are going to be interrupted and there's not much we can do about it. So here we are. I got to get back on track. I got to make sure that my calendars are in, so they're not. They're meant to be in sync with each other. So if I put something on one calendar, it's meant to go on the other. It's Google Calendar. It doesn't always work. So I always try and only use one calendar so that I know that one is assured. And yes, I dropped the ball this time. But that is, I've got to stay more diligent on that and pay attention to the thought at the back of the mind. You thought you had a show this morning, Sarah. So kind of retrace your steps, retrace your mental steps and go like, why did I think that? Look at all the calendars, look at who's meant to be coming up and see if it jogs your memory. If you have changed a time or if appointment has changed or, something has happened. And when we get overloaded, it's very hard for us to kind of go back in that, isn't it? Because we're overloaded and we cannot always see what's missing. So I find sometimes removing yourself from a situation, you're trying so much busy to remember and you can't in the moment. Go and do something else, distract your mind, and then the thought generally comes forward. But when we're so busy, I can't remember, why can't I remember? I want to remember. We push it further back to the mind. So we want it to come forward, do something else, and it will pop up. But it's the same, the universe sometimes makes things happen and you had to cancel, somebody else had to cancel. I very rarely cancel. It's if I'm looking after grandchildren that are sick, or if I'm dire sick. I mean, I work through sickness, but if I'm dire sick, I work. So, I only have 3 days a week to do my shows, and in those 3 days, no matter what my situation is, I do it unless grandchildren are sick, in which case I'm called on in an emergency. But very often, when I've looked at things that have had to change, I kind of know that the universe has had a say in it. It wasn't the right time, or something was happening in their life, my life, and that when we do come together at a different time, it's worked out better for a different reason. Maybe there's something they learned along the way that now they want to apply, or it wouldn't have been good at that time because so was going on, or this was going on. Sometimes we've just got to pay attention to the universe. And although it's annoying when people cancel, and sometimes it's just inconsiderate because they're, oh, yeah, I don't feel like a podcast today. I'm sorry. That's total and utter disrespect. You committed to a meeting, like a business meeting. This is like a business meeting. I have made all the effort to create your show posting and be ready for the show, and you can't be bothered to turn up because you just don't feel like it. Well, I now do not feel like interviewing you. If there's sickness, there's something generally in the way, a faux pas, whatever, okay, but not just because you don't feel like it. And if you're like that with me, clearly you're like that with your clients, and maybe that's the reason why you're struggling, because it's all about relationships and respect. And we don't build respect by changing appointments at the last moment because you don't feel like it. All right. There's got to be a proper, bigger reason for canceling. I know through the years, people have cancelled for various reasons, and then we've done the show later, and it's ended up being better because the timing was right, the synchronicity was right. It just, it was good. Um, and that's okay. And, I've had times where I've dropped the ball, or, somebody else may have dropped the ball. I understand I've dropped the ball. So if they've dropped the ball and there's a legitimate reason there, I have to respect it because I did the same too. And, there's that flexibility. There's a totally different thing to total disregard to having a good reason for it. So when we have a meeting that we're all prepared for and somebody changes it at the last moment, I know it's frustrating. And I know I must have been very frustrating to my friend who was meant to come on today. And yet he only reached out to me one way and not the other way. And the other way pops up, which tells me I have an email. And then I would have known and I would have jumped on. So yeah, there's all sorts of things here, isn't there? But the big thing is we are going to drop the ball along the way. We are. Things we didn't put down, things we forget, things that take longer and then, push us back on another appointment that you can't make and it's out of your hand. Forgetfulness, yes, it happens. People who are young get forgetful, and certainly as we get older, we get forgetful. And it also is where are you in your present state? I woke up today having had a good sleep, which is rare for me, but I enjoyed that. But kind of in a dump, and I shouldn't be. This beautiful sunshine outside, but just in a slump. And maybe because there is an event happening in my life that is a bit of a milestone, it's not one that I really like. And I'm perhaps thinking on that subliminally, not at the forefront. The forefront, rationalize it's something that has to happen. I have to go ahead with it. The back of the mind is feeling something different. And it pulls you down, it puts you a bit into a slump. Maybe in that slump, I didn't pay attention to the messages that were trying to come forth. That awareness, that self-awareness of all the messaging that's going on inside of you, how do we listen to it through funks, overwhelmness, anxiety, busyness? And how do we hear those little messages that come through? Well, what I was doing apart from just doing some admin work, and while I was doing some admin work, kind of listening to a couple of songs, because music is always my equilibrium, I was being productive. I wasn't just sitting doing nothing. I was being productive, just not in the right lane. Because there's always stuff to fix on my site. There's over, 3,700 shows, and many of those shows go back 11 years. And my postings at those times were not very So, I've refined them since then and go back into some old shows and tidying them up and refine them. And there's always links that drop and then trying to get hold of a company because their services let me down and trying to find somebody, we'll get back to you in 48 hours. No, I don't need 48 hours. I need now. I need someone I can talk to, at least a voice on a phone, something. But we've got to a point now, everything is AI, and I'm not against AI properly used, but if you're using AI for customer service, all it does is refer you to something else back at the site. And that would have helped me. And if it didn't help me, I need extra help. So I need somebody that I can chat with about my problem. And we're seeing this more and more in our companies where we can't get hold of a person, where either through chat where you're checking backwards and forwards or voice, at least a voice that you can explain what is happening and they can address it. But we're getting lazy. We're getting more and more away from customer service and becoming robotic, literally, that we are not able to serve people. And that is pushing people further and further away from various companies because we're going to go where the service is. And we want to go where we are guaranteed we're going to get answers and responses when we need them. And it's going to come from a human being that actually can address our problem. So yes, this automation is great to kind of assess how can I help you, da da da. You need a person, I will put you in contact with them. Fine. but not now just go to that site with this YouTuber, that troubleshooting. Been there, done that, or that is not the way I want to go because it's not addressing my particular problem. I need a person and we can't get them. And like there's so many people supposedly out of work, there's so many people looking for jobs. So why are we seeing less and less of the human interaction in business? So that was my frustration this week of having to get hold of somebody and then having to do something I did not want to do because I couldn't get hold of anyone and and having to go down a different route, which I didn't like, and now I have to relearn, um, which is out of my forte. It takes me much harder to learn those type of things, the technical things, and that threw me off. So is it an excuse? It is my state of mind. So maybe I dropped the ball because I was not being present. Who knows? All of these things add up, right? They layer upon layer. And this is what happens. So I think we really need to pay attention. Remember to take that breath. Let things go so we can start addressing the next thing. Trust our instinctual knowledge, trust our knowingness, trust that little voice at the back of our head that wants to come to the front. Don't dismiss it. Give it space to come forth because that's the knowledge that you need in that moment. So, well, I did a faux pas. I know he'll forgive me. He's been on with me a few times and I know he'll come back. Um, Maybe we'll have to push it to next week. I don't know, but it will be what it will be. So in the meantime, um, whatever you're doing, if you can't delegate, notes, notes, notes. Now, there's no point me writing notes because I write them, then I forget where I've written them. For me, the computer on the calendar has become the place that I pay attention to. I've just got to make sure I pay attention to update a changed appointment, update the changes so that I don't get caught up like this again. And I go to my calendar. Being dyslexic, me writing down, I very often can't read my own writing. It's a scroll. So this is where I prefer to write it in the computer where I can actually read it and then put it somewhere, which is my calendar that will remind me. Because I do look at that every day. I just clearly didn't move the appointment over. So don't beat yourself up. I'm not beating myself up. It is what it is. I've apologized. I've asked, can we reschedule? Um, it happens. There was no disrespect to him. Yes, he had allotted this time. I was doing him a favor with the show anyway. Um, and we will reschedule. But we do have to remind ourselves to be more diligent and to make sure that we don't take more balls in our hands than we can carry. So we will drop some and to whatever your platform is of reminding you, whether it's a diary, a calendar, or an agenda book, whatever you have, is that we pay attention to looking at it. We pay attention to making sure we change those changes, but we also pay attention to the little voice at the back of our head saying, don't you have an appointment right now? And allow it space to come through and give us that reminder. Okay. Never dismiss the little voice because that little voice is something very big and impactful. And you've got too much going on in the front and it can't get through. So take some time out, take a deep breath, go and get a cup of coffee and let it come through. Right. And on to the next. It is what it is. Excuse me, I'm very thirsty today. It is what it is, and we have to pay attention to that. And I'm sure there's going to be more balls dropped in the future. Just again, it's about reminding ourselves to be diligent. And mistakes are made. Own them, always own them, and try to do better. That's all we can do, folks. So next week, hopefully, I am talking about something that is more upbeat and moving forward. In fact, next week is my birthday week. So next week I'll be talking about the turning of the big 7-0. Oh, 7 decades already. So until next time, folks, ciao for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tag at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration, it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.